Okay, we're rolling.
Oh, okay, this is a home interview, Orchard Park, New York. It is the 15th of
May.
May 2007. I was looking at something else. Approximately 3:15 p.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Okay. Well, my full name is Robert, and my mother's maiden name is my middle name. It begins with a K, and I always tell everybody it's Kenneth, but it's really Kuhn. My mother's name was Koon.
Okay.
And my last name is Bindig, same as my father.
Okay. When and where were you born?
I was born in Buffalo. I'm not certain exactly what street, but when I was very young, I lived on Leroy Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, well, I had two sisters, Dorothy and Alice, and Dorothy is related to
Kathleen?
Kathleen.
Mm-hmm.
She's her aunt. But I didn't know that.
Now, when were you born?
December 21st, 1920.
Okay. What was your educational background before you went into service?
Well, I went to from first grade till 8th grade, I went to public school in Buffalo on Poplar Avenue. And then I went to Buffalo Tech, which now became part of Hutch Tech.
Hutch Tech, okay.
But it was all just Buffalo Technical High School. And I took the advertising art course, and that's where I got my training as an artist.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you remember where you were and your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Well, yes, we lived at 98 Crossman Avenue in Buffalo, and we were listening to the radio when we heard about Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going with my wife at the time, and I know we were watching one night when they had the air raid wardens, and you saw the searchlights in the sky as the planes went over and stuff like that. But I didn't go into the service until November 5th in '43.
Now, were you enlisted, or did you were you drafted, or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
Okay. Where did you go for your basic training?
Well, the first stop we made was in New York City. But I took my basic training in Camp Grant, Illinois. And I was in the medics.
How long was that training for, do you remember?
Not really.
Okay.
It was several weeks, but I don't actually remember.
Mm-hmm. Did you learn about a lot about first aid and treating wounds?
Yes. And then after I finished my basic training, they transferred me to a hospital to become, well, like a, not really a company aide, but I had to change bed pads and make beds and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like a hospital, what is it?
Orderly?
Orderly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where was the hospital?
The hospital, boy, now you're gonna see that I don't remember things too well.
That's okay.
That hospital was in, oh dear,
Was it in Illinois, or did you go to another state?
another state.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was in it was Fitzsimmons, which was in Colorado.
Did you get more training there, or advanced training?
Well, actually more just taking care of the wounded and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then I got transferred after I finished that. Then I went to Winters General, which was in Kansas City. And I got more training. But I should say that when I got drafted, I was married. And after I finished basic training, we had a real gruff first sergeant. You trembled when he called your name because, you know, you were scared to death of him. But he turned into a real neat guy once we got finished with our basic training. And he said to me, "You're married now, aren't you?" And I says, "Yes." And he said, "Well, if your wife wants to live here, she can, because we've got a place where we lived in trailers." And he said, "Your wife can come there and live too."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, my gosh. And our first son was born before I took basic training. And when the first sergeant came to see me at the trailer, he was crawling on the floor playing with my son. And I thought, this is the guy that scared me, you know. So, but that's, and then after basic training, they broke up our group. And I don't know where they went, but I got stationed at Camp Grant, and I worked in the supply room, and with a sergeant that was in charge of the supply room, and I was his helper.
Now, was it medical supplies or just?
Yeah, medical supplies.
Mhm.
But then they broke up Camp Grant. And then I went with the hospitals. And let's see, I gotta get it in the right order here. But it's in that article too, so if you want to check me out, or you can, if I did better on that than I'm doing with you fellas. But this trailer camp was also for people that were like farm hands.
According to this article, that's where you started your first artwork, on the sides of cans. What did you do there?
Yeah, I had to paint ash and trash and stuff like that.
So that's the first time they had to use your talents, huh?
Yeah, because I was told when I went into service, now don't volunteer for anything, because like they said, if they ask you, can you draw, because I took art in high school, and I said, well, I did. And then they said, because they'll tell you to then draw a shovel and go out and dig a ditch. But I had volunteered that I could draw, and they wanted to know if I could paint signs, and I said yes. And then they had me make the name tags for all the enlisted men for on their beds and stuff like that. And then there was an officer, I don't know what his rank was, but I think it was probably a captain. But he was teaching, well, medical stuff, like we were learning about malaria, and he said there's two kinds of mosquitoes. Now here's really good. One was Anopheles, now I can't get out a spelling, and one was, the other one I can't remember. But one was the type that gave you malaria.
Mm-hmm.
And this officer said, can you draw a picture of what they look like? So I looked one up in like an encyclopedia or something, and I had to make a so high on a piece of like oilcloth, like an old tablecloth, and then I had to draw different diseases and stuff like that. But I was still just a private. And then I got shipped overseas. Well, I should say first, my wife followed me, went to the hospitals where I worked.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, this is going to be your last furlough, so you'll be going home. We're in Buffalo again, and your wife will go with you and she'll stay there. She can't go overseas with you. And then we got shipped down to San Francisco to get shipped overseas. And I got sent to the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wrote home to my wife, I used to draw cartoons on the envelopes. And it was sort of like a diary. If I was on KP or guard duty, I made a joke about it and put it on the envelope. And one day I got called into the headquarters, and the officer said, "Are you the one that's drawing these cartoons on the envelopes?" And I thought, oh boy, here I go. I'm going to be court-martialed because I'm sending home military secrets. And he said, "Well, wouldn't you rather be drawing than being a medic?"
Mhm.
And I says, "Yes, but didn't think I had a choice." And they said, "Well, if you want to draw, well, we can transfer you to be an artist." And I says, "Well, I'd rather draw cartoons than drawing blood and stuff like that." And they said, "Okay, we'll do that, we'll switch you." And what did they call that? I think they called it psychological warfare.
Oh, the propaganda.
Yeah, it was psychological warfare.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you drew leaflets and different things?
Yeah. Does it say that in there?
It said you made propaganda, did propaganda.
Well, we were getting pretty cocky at that time, and they were bombing Japan every day, and we were starting to tell them what time we were going to raid and where. And so they were alerted.
Did you call me?
No.
No?
Well,
So these were leaflets that were going to be dropped on Japan, then you were making cartoons.
with the time of the bombing and stuff
Mm-hmm,
like that.
mm-hmm. Now what were some of the things you drew on these?
Well, those weren't really cartoons, but
Mhm.
they were just dates and times and stuff like that. And I mean, boy, I can't even tell you who was with the planes that bombed.
It wasn't Doolittle, was it?
This is late, a lot later.
Oh,
So you went in, this was what, around 1944, 45, then you were doing this?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the way to the Philippines, we passed Pearl Harbor, but we didn't stop. They just said, "That's Pearl Harbor," you know. And then one day, we passed a little island, and they told us that we could go ashore and have a picnic. And they gave us candy bars, which were stale. And soft drinks and stuff like that. That was our picnic. And then we went on to the Philippines. And we landed in Manila. And I continued to do drawing. But then they told us we were going to go to Korea. And a lieutenant and I were supposed to draw a little pamphlet for everybody that was gonna go to Korea. And with certain phrases to learn, like where is a hospital, or where is a place we could get some food, or that type of thing. And then my wife will get that out in the kitchen. I got another copy of that if you would like.
Oh, well, this one's okay. This is fine. Thank you. What, so you drew leaflets then for the soldiers, introducing them to Korea and places in Korea? Mm-hmm.
Because I can tell you all the mistakes I made. Because they said, draw a typical building that they would see in Korea. So I was looking through some National Geographics, and I thought, this looks like an Oriental building. And I drew that, and I later on found out that it was some famous building in China. But I took it, put it down as a typical building you would see in Korea. And I drew the women with their costumes. And that was right because I could see the women there.
How long were you in Korea?
Well, let's see. I left in '46. But when I went to Korea, this lieutenant and I did that little booklet. He was going to be in charge of the art department, and I was going to be his assistant. Well, I never saw him after that. He went to town and buying knickknacks and stuff like that to send home to his girlfriend. And I was in charge of the art department then. I had 4 Korean artists and an interpreter.
What kind of things did you work on?
Well, posters mostly, like telling the people of Korea were all under Japanese rule, and so they didn't really know how to take care of themselves and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So then they were being taught what to do, and we put out 2 newspapers, and one day they said, oh, I should get back a bit. They hand-lettered the newspapers because there was no typesetting and stuff like that then. And then one day they said, we should have a page for the children. Could you draw a comic strip? And I says, yes. I always wanted to do a comic strip. But I couldn't write their language, so the comic strip, first of all, it read from right to left, Korean style, and that was something to get used to, because you draw so the flow of the pictures went the way they were used to. And I didn't do any language, so one of the officers upstairs said it should be about two little twin bears, and that they would be called the mischievous twin bears, because they were always getting into trouble. And they wanted the cartoons to be something that the children would be familiar with. Like there was one thing there where the little girls got on a plank and jumped up and down like a teeter-totter, but they stood on it rather than sat to see how high they could go. And so I drew two little girls doing this, and then the bears imitated them when the girls went away to go home, and they got on the teeter-totter. Well, I should explain this a little bit. I had two young kids that came in and watched me draw. They would sit and watch me draw. And they would say to me, "This okay or this no okay?" And when I drew these pictures of the little girls on the teeter-totter, I had one go up high, and when she come down, the other one jumped, and her side went up, and she got hit under the chin, and got knocked up, and the kid said, "This no okay, this no okay." And I said to the interpreter, "Why isn't this okay?" And he said, "It's too rough. It's this little girl getting hit under the chin." But, in fact, I could show you some of those later on if you'd like to see them.
Yes, we would.
Because I don't think I mentioned that.
No. You didn't mention that in the article. Now, were these were just black and white?
Just
Because they were
black
for
and
a
white.
newspaper?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but it really wasn't like being in the service at all. Because I didn't have any commanding soldier over me.
Now, did you stay on a military base, or were you
No,
more with the civilians, the Korean
Well,
people?
when we landed in Korea, we were at our art department was on the main floor of the Capitol building in Seoul.
Mm-hmm.
And we had regular mess and stuff like that. We didn't eat Korean food or anything like that. And then when it got time for us, you got points for every day you were overseas. I don't know if you were in the service.
No, but we know about the point system.
And you got points for if you were in combat, which I never was. But when I got in charge of the art department, I got transferred to be a staff sergeant because I was in charge of these artists. So it really wasn't like work. And the art department was 2 big rooms, and in one of the rooms we had a printing press, and there was an entire group that knew how to run a printing press and things like that. And so they started doing some of the posters and stuff that we were designing.
Now, were the posters in color?
Yes.
Were you able to use color in the posters?
Yeah. The comic strip was just black and
Mhm.
white.
Was there any person or persons that kind of stood out in your memory that you ran across while you were in service? Any officers or people that served with you?
Yes. The officers were very nice. There was one particular one that we all liked. He was a captain, Captain Thomas, and the officers ate mess in a different place than the enlisted men. We were, and I guess we were getting fed better than they were, because this Captain Thomas always would come out, "What did you guys have for lunch today?" And we told him, and he said, boy, he thought that was wonderful, the stuff that we were getting that they weren't getting. Well, anyway, there was he always just wore his everyday uniform, no dress uniform or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he had the same ODs like we had, but he wore his railroad track stuff.
Did you ever carry a weapon around with you at all, or?
I can tell you about that. One of the reasons why I was in the medics was I was a conscientious objector. And I said I couldn't fire a weapon or anything like that. But one day they said well, you gotta learn how to use a weapon. So they transferred me out of the medics for one day into the infantry, and I had to learn how to use a weapon. But I don't think that was enough.
No.
And
Was this for religious reasons, or that you were a conscientious objector?
yes, I guess you could call it that.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't believe in killing. But there were a couple of times when they gave me a hard time because I was a conscientious objector. Like, there was one time we had to go on a hike. And the guys all carried their rifles and stuff like that. But they told me that since you can't, we'll put you in charge of cleaning the grease pit and stuff like that. They were gonna give me a hard time. And I got a lot of KP extra. Now you asked me a question, oh, I can't remember what you said.
Yeah, I asked you about why you were a conscientious objector. You answered that.
But then one time, when we were first landed, at that time I was I wasn't a staff sergeant, I was just we had ranks of T5 and T4 and stuff like that, which were corporals and sergeants. And when we landed, if you were above private, you didn't have to do guard duty, or I shouldn't say, you didn't have to do certain Army things, but we did have to do guard duty. And the guy, my sergeant, he gave me a sidearm in a holster, and he said, when you're on guard duty, you gotta wear this. And I told him that I was a CO, that I wasn't supposed to have a weapon. And he said, well, I can't put you on guard duty without some protection, so you better put it on, or I'll get in trouble. So I did that, and while I was on guard duty, again, the Japanese still had soldiers doing certain things. And this one Japanese soldier come up to me and he said, "Are you alone out here?" And I thought, oh boy, here we go. He's going to attack me or something. And I said, no, there's another bar down around the corner over here, and another one down here. I was lying, but he believed me and he left me alone.
Now, the war was over, were they being held as prisoners, or were they just roaming around, the Japanese?
Well, I don't know what they had to do things because the Korean men didn't know anything about how to take care of things and stuff like that.
So the United States was using the Japanese soldiers to do things?
Like we had a fire while we were there, and the Koreans didn't know how to run the fire engine and stuff like that, so they let the Japanese were doing that.
Now, the Japanese had turned their weapons in. They didn't have any weapons, did they?
Yeah, they had weapons.
They still had their weapons.
Because that's why I thought when he said, "Are you alone?" I thought he was gonna come up to me. And but he left me alone. Can't think of any other highlights.
When did you go back home?
When my points came up, and I was told I could go to this, I don't know, like just a big room where we all sat around and shooting the breeze and stuff like that. And then we knew we were going to go home. It was, but by an odd coincidence, my wife's birthday was April 1st. And that's when I left Korea.
That was 1946?
Yeah.
Were you discharged as soon as you got home to the States?
Yeah. Well, not exactly this, because I should back up a thing here. I wanted to work at Walt Disney. I wanted to do animation and stuff like that. And I had written to Disney, how do you go about doing this type of drawing? How would I get a job? And he said, well, you'd have to do a storyboard for one of the Disney characters. And he told me they wanted me to do Goofy. And they wanted him to go to a haunted house and tell how he got in, and then what he did to get in there, and they said, make it funny. And I did that. And I was working on this at home, and that's when Uncle Sam tapped me on the shoulder and said, we want you. And I never finished that thing, and I never got to see Walt. But I still got this part of the storyboard that I did.
When were you discharged?
Well, as I said, I got home in time for my wife's birthday, which was April 1st.
Did you ever use the GI Bill after you left service?
No. But when I left the U.S. to go in basic training, I was working for an advertising agency in Buffalo. And when I got told I was going to ship overseas, I told the people at the agency that I was going, and they said, well, you'll always have a place to work here when you get out. And they did keep my place. And I became an art director for this agency.
Did you ever use the 5220 club?
No, I don't know.
It was $20 a week for 52 weeks. It was kind of unemployment insurance after you left service? Or did you start working right away?
I worked right away,
Okay.
but they had a thing there that they wouldn't give me the salary that I was getting. I don't know what you got a base, like just a minimum pay, I don't know what it was. But then after so many weeks, you got a raise and things like that, until you got up to where you were when you got drafted. So I guess that was like something like what you were talking about, but I never heard it.
Yeah, it was from the government. You probably didn't take it then. Did you join any veterans organizations at all?
No,
Never had a desire to?
no.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that was in service with you?
Yeah, once one of the guys that worked in the printing shop in the room next to where I was the art director, he came to see me. He lived in Pennsylvania, and he came to see me. He wanted to know what I was doing and what we were exchanged notes. Oh, I should tell you, get back and tell you this one thing. As I say, I worked in a supply room, and I also worked doing artwork at the basic training place. And the rest of my outfit got shipped out. And I said to the sergeant, big tough sergeant, I said, what happened to those guys? And they said they went over to the Battle of the Bulge. So they really got sent into war, where I got shipped out and I'm drawing pictures and stuff like that. I really had it easy.
How do you think your time in the service changed or had an effect on your life?
Well, I mean, when I was first going overseas, I thought, this is going to be rough. But it wasn't. I never got treated bad. And as I said, I was in charge of the art department, and it was just like when I was back in the States. I was in charge of the art department at this advertising agency. So I really had it easy.
Kind of going back a little bit, was it difficult at that time to get listed as a conscientious objector?
Yes.
What kind of procedure did you have to go through?
I had to explain why I wanted
Mm-hmm.
that. I said, well, I don't think I could kill a person, so I couldn't handle a weapon or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they, and I asked if I could be in the medics, and they said, well, if you saved somebody's life, why wouldn't that be just like you repaired a rifle or something, and so that they could kill? And I said, well, it wasn't the same. I said, I didn't teach them how to shoot or anything like that. And I said, if they killed somebody, that was up to them. But I wouldn't. But they said, well, you're like repairing a person to be a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
But as I say, nobody really gave me a hard time.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview. Do you have some of the things you wanted to show us?
Yeah.
We could turn the camera.
At that time, Lou Ayres, the actor,
Mm-hmm.
he was a CO also, and he was sent to the Philippines.
Did you ever get to see him there, or?
No, not really,
Mm-hmm.
but I know he was in line for mess, and I wanted to talk to him, but he became a chaplain's assistant, so he was there because of religion.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a photo he could hold up?
No, himself. No.
Okay.
Okay, so we can.
I got more copies.
No, that's okay. We have this one. This will be fine.
I knew the man that did his lettering, and he said, would you like to be in the strip? I said, you're kidding. And he says, no, he said, have your wife take some photographs of you, front view, side view, back view, and things like that, and send it to Milt, and he'll put you in. And
So
then-
that's you up there?
That's me up there. And I was Hitler's commanding officer. And this was the camp commanding officer. And that was me, and he called me Ludwig von Digben. He said I had to change your name so that you wouldn't sue me or anything. And this was supposed to be me. And Hitler knocked me on the head.
Now you designed the this for the Bisons,
Yes,
the logo for the Bisons.
yes. When I was freelancing, I had an office in Buffalo, and I had two good accounts. One was the Bison, Buffalo Bisons, and the other was, no, that wasn't on the account that I had, but when Rich Products bought the bills and the Bisons, Bob Rich Jr. asked me if I could do a trademark character for the Bisons, and I did that one. And then and the other account was National Gypsum. And then toward the end of my career, National Gypsum moved out of Buffalo and they went down to North Carolina. And that was the end of that account. And Bob Rich had a daughter that married some guy, and this guy that she married, he got in charge of the advertising part of Rich Products. And so I didn't have that anymore. He got it. So that was the end of my two accounts that I had.
Now, when did you stop drawing? I know you probably still draw, correct?
No, I
Oh,
don't.
you don't anymore.
No. The last drawings I did was in December of '99. Because when I lost the two accounts I had, I got a man that I lived in the Catskills, got in touch with me, and he wanted me to do a comic book for big boy restaurants.
Oh,
It was a giveaway book. And I did that for a while.
I see you're mentioned here in Gasoline Alley. Right up here?
Yeah.
What prompted that? Were you good friends with the artist of that cartoon?
No, I never really met him. But when Skeezix graduated from high school, I knew the man that was drawing Gasoline Alley.
Okay.
And what time did you say?
no.
No, I just says okay.
And he asked me if I had any of the Gasoline Alley comic strips when Skeezix was in high school. Well, that's one of my hobbies, was saving the old comic strips. And I said, yes, I did. So he said, if you would send me some, I'd like to use them in my story. So he made me the class historian.
Oh,
And he
okay.
And then this was another one that he put me. This was supposed to be me.
All right. Okay, we're just about out of film.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to show you at
Well,
least.
you've got quite a collection of illustrators and comic books.
Their rice to the market. They had them in burlap bags and stuff like that. And the bears tried to eat the rice, and the oxen scared them, and they ran around and they pulled the bag down and spilled it, and then the farmer whacked them with a whip.
They were called the Twin Mischievous Bears. That was the name of them?
Yes,
Yeah, okay, and I see you had to start from right to left.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And like this was New Year's Day. And on New Year's Day, the oldest, that's my son, he cuts the grass. The oldest member of the family, the youngest one in the family, bowed down to the oldest one, and he lit their pipe, and the little bears saw that, so they tried to imitate it, and then he
Okay,